Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ted Gardner, and I am an interviewer for the Library of Congress Oral History Project here at our great public library of Cincinnati. And we have the honor and the pleasure of talking to a friend today, C.J. Daigle. C.J. and I have known each other for a few years, and we share an activity monthly, and CJ, it's wonderful to see you. You're looking fit.
Thank you. Just had a birthday.
Where were you born?
Hanson, Massachusetts.
Hanson, Massachusetts. Is that near Boston?
It's about 25 miles south.
Oh, I'll see. In that great Boston metropolitan area there. Yeah. Well, you had indicated to me that, of course, that your parents were Canadian, French Canadian, and where did you start out school?
I started in Hanson.
In Hanson.
In Hanson.
Yeah.
Went 8th grade, and our high school was shared with the next town up.
Okay, all right. Brothers and sisters?
Sisters.
Sisters.
One 2 years older, one 2 years younger.
Okay.
And that was the whole family.
You were the ham sandwich.
Yes, sir.
Good. Well, going through school and so forth, what interests did you have when you were a boy? Did you have any special hobbies or anything?
Well, one thing that stuck with me for quite a while is when I was 5 years old, I wanted to be a Marine.
Really?
And I never, ever, to this day, haven't changed.
You're still longing for that, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that is something. Well, that's not uncommon. A lot of boys had that desire, and you're, of course, you know, as they say, once a Marine, always a Marine.
True.
When you were, you know, there are days or moments or events in history that stand out. Where were you on the 7th of December, 1941?
I was visiting with aunts and uncles in Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay.
It was a family affair. We used to go down there about every second or third Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
My dad, the kids, would go down to visit his brothers. We had one that lived we had two that lived in Providence and one in Woonsocket. But this particular Sunday, we happened to be in Providence.
And you all heard the news?
We heard the news, but it was on our way home because it was late at night.
Oh, yeah.
And before they got out, and there were kids hawking specials on the newspapers.
Sure.
And after dark, it was very, very unusual.
I should say, well, that was not an uncommon situation with a lot of people, but it is something that one always remembers. In high school, for example, did you have activities, special activities or anything, or athletics or anything like that?
No, I was a tiny tot, and the day they called for football tryouts, I went down to the locker room, and the coach looked up and said, "What are you doing here?" At 5'6", 130 pounds,
dripping wet.
He didn't see much use for me.
Well, that's, you know, that too, that happened to a lot of people, and as the situation developed, now you were born in 1925. 1925, okay. So you're 85 going on 86. The point I'm making, of course, is that you were well aware of what was going on in the world after Pearl Harbor, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. And I was also 16.
Yeah, right. And then you had to wait till you got to be 18, right?
17.
17.
17 with mother's permission, yeah.
Oh, with mother's permission.
Yeah.
That's right, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how'd your family feel about that? Were they?
Well, Ma was a little bit unhappy. She wasn't unhappy that I was going in the Marine Corps, but she was unhappy that I quit high school to go in because she felt that as a man of the family, or soon to be a man of the family, that I needed that high school diploma to get a good job to
Sure.
support the family.
Sure.
So that was a disappointment to
Yeah,
her. But
yeah.
other than that,
Right. Yeah, and that is a problem because you were right at that age area that was pretty sensitive. Well, now, so going into the Marines, you went through the usual physical inspection and all that stuff.
certainly did.
Most of us will never forget that either.
No,
But then, where did they send you first off?
they sent me to Paris Island. South
Paris
Carolina.
Island, South Carolina. Yeah, that's a great place. I was down there a couple of years ago, and they've got that great Marine Museum there on the base. Boy, oh boy,
Yeah.
wonderful place. How did you do in boots?
Survived. That's all you do in boot camp is try to survive
That's right.
and pick up what knowledge they're throwing at you.
And and it is a big shock,
Oh yeah.
psychologically as well as physical.
Yes, I sometimes wondered what in the heck I'd got myself
I
into.
know, you wonder, why am I here? Why did I do this? And that SOB over there that's given me such a bad time. Well, from, of course, Paris Island, what was that, 60 days, 90 days or something?
It was a little over 60.
Yeah. And any special training, anything that you were headed for, gunnery and so forth?
No, in those days, we pretty well were all riflemen, infantry
Right.
troops, mud Marines.
Right. And I'll bet you were I bet you turned out to be a good shot.
Well, I don't know. They gave me a machine gun to make sure.
Oh, they did? Spread it around a little bit.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Well, I was always impressed. I was Navy, and I was always impressed with the Marines because, you know, so many guys just coming out of boots had a badge on for their marksmanship and
That's
so
correct,
forth.
yeah.
And we in the Navy didn't have that. But okay, so then from Paris Island, where off to what were you?
Well, they gave me 5 days at home, providing I could wire home and get the money, because they didn't have time to do the administrative details necessary to pay us. So I went home for 5 days over Christmas of '42,
Okay.
and then I reported back into Camp Lejeune, politically
Yeah.
correct, Camp
French.
Lejeune, and a week later we shipped out troop train to San Diego.
Oh boy, all the way across the country.
Yeah.
My gosh, yeah. I'll never forget that trip either.
Dining cars to the Mississippi and Harvey houses from the Mississippi on to San Diego.
How about that? Oh, you did stop for Harvey House. Huh?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Might be 10 o'clock at night, or
Yeah,
3 in the morning, but that's how they fed us.
isn't that something? I didn't realize that. Yeah, the Marines. So you got out to Pendleton.
No, we went right to dockside at San Diego and got off the train at 6:30 in the morning, and at 1 o'clock that afternoon, the ship sailed.
My gosh, they were waiting for you.
Yes, sir. January 5th, 43.
How about that? Well, that, yeah, that kind of took your breath away. What, what outfit was it? What, 1st Marines or?
No, I was in the 4th or 5th Replacement Battalion.
Mm-hmm.
And we initially went to American Samoa,
Oh, yes.
and we stayed there 4 hours and got off at the Matsonia, which is the queen of the
Boy,
Matson line,
I'll say. Beautiful
and got
ship.
on an old Danish lumber ship and sailed 84 miles, I think, to British Samoa,
Oh, yeah.
where we already had some Marines stationed there, and they were going to teach us jungle fighting.
Mm-hmm.
They did that for about 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you find that that jungle fighting really helped you and guided you in your coming experience?
It certainly did.
Yeah.
At that time, our quote older Marines were, leftovers from Nicaragua, Haiti,
Yeah.
Cuba, and some of those guys had pretty much enjoyed guerrilla fighting.
Sure.
Oh, I know I was out on maneuvers one night, and all of a sudden I felt a hand on my jacket and a 45 in the small of my back. And a 45 in the small of your back in the middle of a dark jungle night feels like a 155 cannon. About that big.
And who's the enemy?
Yeah, but it was one of our instructors. I was tail gunner in the formation, and he just kidnapped me
Mm-hmm.
to alert the rest of the people that you got to keep track of everybody.
Right. Boy.
Lesson well
Taught
learned.
you a lesson about keeping your wits about you, I should say. Well, that training in the Samoas, that must have been interesting too. But, you were there what, several weeks?
About 7.
About 7 weeks. Did they give you any indication of where you were going to be sent, or?
No, sir.
From there?
No. They just brought another ship alongside and put us on it.
And that was it.
Yeah, and we went to New Zealand, Wellington, and the 2nd Marine Division had just shortly before that come back from Guadalcanal.
Oh, yeah.
The Army had relieved the Marines at the canal, and our guys there was a lot of malaria in the outfit.
Mm.
So we filled in where the open ranks were.
Mm-hmm. Did you get malaria?
No, sir.
Oh, you were lucky.
Later on, I got dengue.
Oh, dingy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was kind of I've never experienced that either, but I understand that wasn't any fun. So New Zealand, what, did you just touch base there and then pull right out again, or?
Oh, no.
You
I
spent some days?
stayed there from early March until late September, early October. But we were doing some heavy-duty training there,
Mm.
and it's a wonderful place to visit. Oh, God, it was great.
Everybody said that. I never
It
got.
was wonderful.
I
The
never got
natives,
to-
the natives were friendly.
Yeah.
And Mom and Dad would take you home to feed you.
Mm-hmm.
And they had milk bars were a heck of a lot more available than in a regular bar. Of course, at 17, 18, I really wasn't looking at beer, booze, or anything else.
No.
But that milk bar sure was nice.
Oh boy, I'll say. And I understand the girls were very friendly too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Love those Yanks.
Well, we got there, the day we got there, there was a troop ship that came back from North Africa and had a lot of New Zealand diggers that
Oh, yeah.
were coming home for the first time in a few years.
Yeah.
And they weren't too happy with the
No.
Marines being in Wellington.
Oh,
And
and that snappy, beautiful,
there was a to-do downtown that night.
yeah, I'll bet there was. And I know they resented that, that handsome Marine uniform, and, you know, they could see that pretty tough competition with their girls that they left behind them.
Yeah.
But those fellas fought a lot, didn't they? That North Africa campaign and everything.
Yep.
Did you get acquainted with any of them, or?
No, not really. You know, that they, of course, the next day over the weekend, they were dispersed to their home bases wherever. And of course, it thinned their ranks down a lot. So everything was pretty amiable from then on.
Right. Well, now, the kind of ship that you, was that the lumber ship that you went on from?
No, I don't, honestly don't remember what kind of a ship it was that took us from British Samoa to New Zealand. I really, really don't remember.
Yeah, I never had any contact with the Anzacs. I never had any opportunity. Of course, being on a ship at sea, you don't have much contact with anybody. But all right, now you've been doing some pretty heavy training there in New Zealand. You mentioned a machine gun. Was that 50 caliber?
No, 30.
30 caliber.
30 caliber air cooled.
Light one. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. How about that? You had to learn to take it apart and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
You even got to shoot it.
You even got to shoot it. Were you mechanically inclined in any way, adept with your mechanical knowledge?
Yeah, had no problem there at all.
No problem at all.
No, sir.
Yeah, that was great training, great training. Well, now after New Zealand, you said that you were there for about what? About
March through September.
March through September.
6 months.
6 months, yeah. Well, you got almost used to civilian life, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
All right, then comes the rude awakening. You're big on the.
It certainly was, yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, we loaded up, and actually we were trying to deceive the natives as to what our plans were. So we went up to Hawke's Bay, which is pretty far up the North Island, and made an amphibious landing for practice. It was an all-day affair, and it was ragged edges. But we got back aboard ship, and then instead of going back to Wellington, as we all thought we were going to, we headed for Tarawa.
Oh, Tarawa, yeah. Yeah, I know Tarawa. Huh. Now, while you were there, did you have any any contact with the Maoris or the native Indians?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting people. Beautiful country, rugged mountains, I should say. Yeah. Did you get a chance to ski or anything like that?
Horseback riding.
Horseback riding. Somebody told me once that there were more sheep than people in New Zealand.
I don't know, but I know I used to go horseback riding on Sunday afternoons.
Oh gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful opportunities then for enjoying life as much as you could in a place like that. Well, then after September came along, and then what happened?
Well, like I say, we sailed to Tarawa.
And Tarawa was in November.
November 20th.
Yep.
November 20th.
Yep. That was a horrible. This is what we really want to hear about CJ is Tarawa, knowing what a terrible terrible battle it was, the odds that you faced with the water, the depth of the water and all that. Tell us about that.
Okay. Well, my my unit, or the unit I was with, we did not have a part of D-Day action. We were in reserve. However, about 2 p.m. that for D-Day, they needed us, they alerted us to be landing on the next atoll over. Tarawa was a string of atolls that ran about 20-odd miles, just like going to Key West.
Mm-hmm.
And they alerted us to land on the next atoll over and cut off the escape route because some of the Japanese were leaving and heading on down the road a piece.
Mm-hmm.
So we landed and set up our defense line there. But that was just for that day and
Mhm.
night.
Hmm.
Because the next day they boated us up, sent us around to the original landing sites. And they still couldn't get any boats over the reef.
Yeah.
We had to wade ashore. And wading ashore, even, and like I say, when I went in, which was on the second day, when you're wading in water this deep,
Right.
and you're carrying 2 boxes of machine gun ammo,
Wow.
and numerous somebodies on the beach are shooting at you,
Yeah.
it's a terrifying feeling.
Oh, I should say so. Well, I've read a lot about that and about the fact that the charts that we had, the Allies had, were old charts, you know, for depth of water and the fact that didn't account for the fact that coral grows, you know, and expands. Walking on coral is a bad enough experience all by itself.
This is true. This is true. Yeah,
Did it
Yeah.
cut up your boots or anything like that?
a little bit, but not
Yeah,
not to make them unusable.
right.
But we in general, we Marines learned an awful lot at Tarawa that served us well the rest of the Pacific War.
Mm-hmm.
For one thing, we found out that our communications pieces were not worth anything.
Yeah.
But secondly, I just learned this or read this in a book here not too long ago, that the command ship was, command control group was on a battleship. Well, every time they fired their guns, they knocked out all the radios.
Sure. Good.
So they immediately changed that for the next operation.
Good, yeah.
We just, matter of fact, the next operation, which was the Marshals, we, the Marines, had frogmen to find the
Mhm.
beaches and get them ready for a landing.
Mhm.
But those are several of the lessons that we learned at Tarawa.
Right, right. Well, Tarawa was a terrible, terrible battle. We lost heavily there, and it just seems like it was one of those places that we could have avoided in, looking back over things. There are certain places in the Pacific, I know that for example, the Palaus, we never needed to go into the Palaus at all.
No.
That was such a desperate place. So you were there in the Tarawa area for how long?
Well, we were there for 3 days, and then my unit, having been in reserve, we were selected to go down the chain of atolls and corral the ones that had escaped before we blocked off the back door.
Mm-hmm.
So we stayed there and ran them rascals to the last atoll, and then eliminated them, and that was the day after Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
We had Thanksgiving on March.
Did you find that the enemy had built pretty strong emplacements there and everything?
Well, they were pretty well centered on what they were going to do as a member of the Japanese race, but they weren't cross-trained in anything,
Hmm.
and
That's interesting.
well, I give you an example of if they told a Japanese machine gunner to fire down the road, he did exactly what he was told. And if somebody walked up the sidewalk to where he was and dropped a hand grenade on him, it didn't bother him.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't told to cover the sidewalk, told him to shoot down the road.
Isn't that something?
So that played out to our advantage.
Of course, of course. So they weren't what you'd call innovative or
No initiative at all.
no initiative whatsoever.
No.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, yeah.
And they found out at Guadalcanal earlier on in the festivities out there in the Pacific that they dropped the mortar round into a Japanese messing area, and all of the mortarmen were eating at that time. So they want their mortar support because nobody is cross-trained.
Mhm.
So
My goodness.
that was, those are some of the lessons learned
Sure,
the
of
hard way.
Of course. Now, you weren't wounded, were you?
No, sir, never.
Boy, you were lucky. You must have led a charmed life.
Yes, sir.
After Tarawa, then you said the Marshals were next.
Yeah, but not for us.
Not for you.
No. No, they were the next engagement, but the 4th Division sailed straight out from California to the Marshals. That was kind of an unheard of thing, but that's what happened. But
Aye.
we stayed on Tarawa about 6 or 7 weeks,
Oh.
and then they sent us back to Hawaii, the Big Island,
Mm-hmm.
and we set up a training camp up on the Parker Ranch,
Mm-hmm.
and we stayed there until March or April, and then we got ready for, we didn't know it, but we were going to Saipan.
Mm-hmm.
But we did that one on LSTs.
Mm-hmm. Flat bottom boats.
Hawaii to Saipan on an LST.
Oh, that must have been torture.
30 days.
30 days
Yep.
on one of those tubs. Goodness sakes,
Yeah.
I should say. Yeah. There again, I was very fortunate. I didn't have to experience that. But the LST, of course, was really an amazing development.
Yep.
As a
Yeah, I was with the
support ship.
with the old 300 footers. I
Yeah.
think they're 380 now.
Yeah, yeah,
We had a little bitty fella.
yeah. Did you see the one that came here to town a couple of years ago?
No.
The LST came to town. Well, and life aboard the LST was not, you didn't have a lot of room to stretch out and walk around or anything like that.
Well, they didn't even have any place to sit and have your meal.
Really?
No, the galley was in the superstructure, and you walk in one side and out the other. Walked in on the port side, out the starboard with your
Mhm.
mess tray filled with food,
Mhm.
and found you someplace to anchor to eat.
How about
But there were no dining facilities available.
My goodness. How many troops would you put aboard an LST?
One company, which is
120?
about 200 plus.
About 200. Huh. My goodness sakes, that's something. Now, did you have LCIs, smaller craft as well?
Had the LCI up top on blocks,
Mm-hmm.
and let's see, one rifle platoon slept under the LCI,
Wow.
one slept in it.
Uh-huh.
I was in the machine gun platoon, so we had the berthing compartment, quote unquote, on the port side, and the headquarters company and all their headquarters platoon and all their ancillary admin clerks slept on the other side.
Hmm.
That was it.
Hmm.
Of course, the alligator drivers, they all slept in their tractors.
Yeah. Wow. And Marines manned the alligators, did
Oh,
they?
yes, sir. Yeah, them alligators have always been a Marine thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Well, those vessels weren't very heavily armored either, were they?
No,
You
no.
didn't have much protection.
No.
Gosh. And then they dropped that ramp and into the water you went. Yeah, I had friends that were at Tarawa, and you know, all of a sudden they went down into water over their head with their heavy loads and everything.
Yeah. But when that alligator goes off the ramp of the LST, before it becomes buoyant, you think you're in a submarine
Wow.
till it finally becomes buoyant, float. But it's a nervous experience.
I should say so. Shipping water and everything else. Oh, that horrible salt water. Well, now, this is interesting to have an insight into. There you were, a youngster, just a youngster, you know, doing
18.
these things.
18.
Good grief.
Yeah.
And besides your machine gun, what did you have to carry? What did you have? You had a backpack?
Yeah. And a carbine.
And a carbine as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. I was carrying 2 boxes of ammo in those days.
all right.
I didn't graduate up to the machine gun yet.
Oh, my goodness.
You had to work your way up the rank.
Yeah, right. And of course, you had your own bedding and everything else. Well, from the way back from Tarawa to the big island of Hawaii, did you have a chance to relax a little bit? Except, now, were you on an LST going back to Hawaii?
No.
No.
We weren't a bigger boat.
Had a regular, had a civilized ship.
Yeah.
Well, that you mentioned the Parker Ranch, of course. That was a famous place where they raised cattle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, gosh. So, did you get a good chance to see Hawaii?
Not particularly. We went into Honolulu. We didn't get to Pearl. We went into Honolulu, and then we went over to Hilo. And then they put us in trucks up over the volcano and dropped down into the Parker Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
Said, okay, that's where your home is. Well, just flat ranch land.
Yeah, right.
We'll have some tents drop by tomorrow. You can put them up.
So you got to see the live volcanoes, Kilauea and
Oh yeah, we
Mauna Loa. And,
yeah, well, it wasn't live then. It wasn't live then. It was pretty dormant.
yeah.
But because we went up one of them, Mauna Kea, whatever. We climbed one almost every day. Part of our training
Oh,
for
part of your
going to
training.
Saipan to
Yeah,
climb
right.
Mount Tapachau.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, those Marianas were really rugged. Okay, so there, then from Hawaii, you went to into the Saipan campaign. Now
By way of the Marshalls.
Yeah, and that was mainly June of 1944 when we invaded Saipan.
Yep.
Our ship, we supported the landings.
June 15th. Yep.
Yeah, right. Where did you go ashore in Saipan?
Left flank, which was just to the south of Garapan. And Tannenberg, Sharon, Kanoa were down further on the right. But we were the left flank. The outfit I was with was the left flank unit.
Hmm.
I had an interesting one there. I was a bow gunner. On the Amtraks in those days, at least, they had 2 machine guns up in the, quote, passenger compartment. And they put a machine gun platoons, they put 2 machine gunners here, 2 here, 2 here, so that we had machine gunners firing all those machine guns on the way in. And then we rendezvoused at the beach. But on the way in, I swear I must have put three belts of ammo into a, quote, shack or something straight in front of me when we landed. So they finally got the tractor up on the beach, and I went over the side. And for that operation, we had the water-cooled machine gun. So I reached up to take the gun off of the gunnel of the Amtrak, and it was stuck. Well, what it was is the petcock on the water jacket was hung up on it.
Wow.
So I'm struggling to get that thing loose, and something hit me in the back of the head. Oh, time to get out of Dodge.
I'll say.
I turned around and looked, and there was another Amtrak had come in the track and hit me in the back of the helmet.
Oh my gosh.
But by then I was out of range.
You were out of range, and you weren't badly hurt, huh?
Not at all. But I jumped into the trench that was in front of me, and there's this outfit, unit, object, whatever, that I had been shooting at, and there's 2 Japs in there looking at me. And I said, golly. And one of them reached back, got a hand grenade, and threw it at me. It hit the overhead. See the overhead here? Well, he hit that overhead, bounced back on him.
Oh my God.
And when it went off, I was out of range again.
You knew to head for the high weeds.
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy.
But it was an interesting landing for me.
Isn't that a lucky blow? Boy, you were lucky. You were blessed. Well, that's so you did go inland on Saipan.
Yeah, and that's where the biggest tank battle was there that night. The prelude, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the tank came up where we were. There were about 6 of us in a crater, probably a big bomb crater. And this doggone little Japanese tank came rolling across in our direction, and he stopped, lowered the gun, and he couldn't lower enough to get to us.
Oh, be darned.
So put it back up again and fired it into the trees to get an airburst on us.
Oh.
I said, Lord, don't fail me now.
Yeah. You got me this far. Don't let me down.
No, and he didn't.
Oh, that's fortunate. Yeah, well, they were They were desperate fighters, weren't they?
Yes,
Their
they were.
spirit and everything. That spirit of Bushido and whatever. But that was interesting what you told us about how they were trained to do a fixed thing and they did not swerve from that.
Nope.
Did you capture any Japanese or anything?
Personally, no.
No.
No. I'm from the George Scott school of thinking.
Yeah, right. And Bull Halsey.
Yeah.
Kill Japs, kill more Japs, kill more Japs.
Yeah.
Well, Saipan was a pretty big island. I mean, you look at a map of the Pacific, and it looks like a small thing. But those some of those islands were big.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what we ended up with, well, they had 3 airstrips when we got there. There was one up north, and then there were 2 down south. And then, of course, we started building 29 strips there.
Okay. So you were on Saipan all the time while you were in that area?
Oh, yeah.
You didn't go to Tinian?
Oh, yeah. The whole division did.
The whole division?
Yeah.
Guam?
Other than the artillery. No, our mission was Saipan, Weak Break, Tinian. So
Right.
it was just an island-to-island thing.
Sure.
And we took Tinian, and then we all went back to Saipan.
Did you have any experience with the civilians there that committed suicide?
Oh, yeah, we were up
You were
spectators.
You were right there.
Yeah.
Gosh, that must have been awful.
Yeah. Well, they had in the Garapan Harbor, they had some Japanese soldier, I don't know, lieutenant, captain, whatever, one of the officers. He marched the line of troops up, had to come up, stoop,
Oh my goodness.
and just get the whole squad. What the hey,
Sure.
boom, gone.
Wow.
And
Goodness.
then a week later, I guess it was the civilians up at Marpy Point.
Mm-hmm. What an experience.
We talked a lot of them in, but not near enough.
No.
They were just absolutely scared to death of us
Okay.
Marines. Oh my God.
And what I've read, no amount of propaganda or, bullhorn communications or anything, they wouldn't believe it.
No.
My goodness sakes. Well, now, after Saipan, what happened?
We got a few-day break, and then we had to go over to Tinian and start the whole war over again.
Same old stuff.
Yeah. But it was it was nice because what they did is they lined up all of the artillery across the southern end of Saipan, and they fired to the middle of Tinian, and there was an absolute iron wall, and we kept the Japs on the wrong side of the minefield, where we landed. 4th Division first, and then the 2nd Division on a beachhead that was only a couple of 100 yards wide, which is suicide.
Yeah.
But actually it was a miraculous plan.
Oh my goodness, I should say. Well, that took some very fine execution of the plan.
Yep, sure did.
Very fine and very narrow. Yeah. Well, by this time then, after Saipan was secured and Tinian, did you go on to Guam?
No, that was a whole different operation.
Different operation, yeah. Yeah, that was, and of course Guam was a bigger island too. What intrigues me also is the fact that our Navy, with the battleships and the cruisers, fired their heavy projectiles, and you know, it didn't do as much damage as you wish they had done, because the Japanese were pretty well entrenched there and everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we pulled Japs out of the caves for 10 months after we secured the island.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah.
Goodness.
Matter of fact, they got so bad that, you know, they were coming out at night and just raising a little havoc, because when they were discovered, they were sneaking around stealing rations.
Mm-hmm.
But when they got discovered, they would fight. And it got to a point where John said, "Hey, enough already. Let's root them out." So we had to sweep through the caves again.
Oh, be done. Yeah. Yeah, I know that was very prevalent. Well, then after you secured the Tinian and the Marianas, where did you go after that?
Went back to Saipan
Back to Saipan.
and continued training for what turned out to be Okinawa.
Were you in danger there on Saipan after you'd secured it? I mean,
Not particularly. We just had, you know, like I say, one or two guys would come out of the caves, and they'd throw one washer machine, Charlie, come over and drop a bomb. He was a equal opportunity guy. He dropped one on them, one on us. But until we got imported in some 90 millimeter anti-aircraft guns. They were flying out of range of 75s, and we got some 90 millimeters in. Well, that ended that.
now, did you have to do physical work on Saipan and Tinian to make these airfields and so forth?
Oh no. That was the Army Corps of
Army.
Engineers. I don't know if the CPs were. Probably were CPs were involved also,
Right.
but they were all Red Ball Express highways from the Coral Mountain to the airstrip. Your vehicle better be carrying coral.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
But,
Terrible work.
we almost all went sunblind out there with all that white coral.
Oh yeah, the reflection was terrible, wasn't it? Yeah, get sunburned and everything.
But it was amazing to us young Marines who, well, you know, we were just mud Marines for heaven's sake, jungle fighters, whatever you wanted to call us. Go down there and watch them building this airstrip, and then seeing the 29s come in. You know, that looked like it was as big as a house.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Those big babies and
Oh,
tires hitting the
yeah.
squeaking when they hit the runways
Oh,
and
yeah.
so forth. Well, that was such an important part of the war, CJ, was to, as we know, to lessen the distance that the B-29s
Yeah.
had to go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, you've really had some tremendous experiences, and your wits and your brains and your good training and everything got you through it pretty well. That's amazing. The were you on Saipan when the bombs were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima?
I was.
You were, so
Yes.
you heard about it there.
Oh, yeah.
What did they? What was the report? What did they tell you about?
Well, we got the same report the rest of the world did from Harry Truman.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Truman really, that was probably one of the most difficult things he ever had to do, but he felt it was the right thing, which
Yep.
it was, of course.
Yep.
The Marianas campaign, I missed the Okinawa campaign, but the Marianas, we were I was on a small flat top, and we had a squadron of planes that supported the landings, you know. So you might have been down there when our TBMs and F4Fs were going in and strafing and so forth and so on.
I was on it.
Yeah, you were there, and you were ducking and say, "No friendly fire, please."
No, you know what we would do is look at these Navy planes come in and drop a bomb, whatever, okay? And we'd look and say, married man, huh? Single file. Depending on when they pulled out. The lower he went, the less married he was.
Oh my goodness, I should
But
say.
that was our
Yeah.
that was our stock in trade then. Yeah. Some guy drop a bomb from way up here. Oh, that's a married man. He don't want to get down there where the shooting's happening.
Oh, for heaven's sake. I never heard that. Isn't
Yeah.
that interesting?
That's why I brought it up, because I figured you
Yeah.
probably hadn't heard that. But no, that was a joke amongst us mud Marines.
Now, tell us about your chow.
Yeah, well,
A lot of C
it-
rations?
it was adequate. Yeah, we had C's, we had K's, we had D's. We had the whole gamut. Every once in a while, they'd throw in some warm stuff. But after we secured Saipan and Tinian and went back to Saipan, then they set up a island command, and for a period of time it was Navy. And I got a letter from my mother, and one of the kids I'd gone to high school with was serving in the island command structure, so second class.
Mm-hmm.
So I hiked up the hill one evening, and they were finishing chow up the top of the hill, Navy mess hall, Quonset hut. We're still in canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And the natives who were their mess boys were finishing up the sliced ham with pineapple slices.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of stuff I'm still eating. You know,
They had civilized food.
so I went into the master at arms shack to find out where my cousin was, and this is young master at arms. He was probably a second class petty officer.
Yep.
He's sitting in a chair behind a gray steel desk a la stateside. He's got his feet up on the desk. I walked in, and he says, "What can I do for you, Sarge?" I said, "Tell me where this outfit was." And he says, "It's down at, I don't know, Oshkosh Airport, whatever." And he says, I said, "I have no idea what that is." He says, "You kind of knew around here, ain't you?" Well, that upset me.
Yeah.
Just a touch.
Mm-hmm.
And being a buck sergeant in the Marine Corps at that point in time, I went like that and hit his feet, propelled
his feet
him
off
right
the-
out of the chair.
Off the desk, yeah.
And I grabbed his shirt and I said, "You SOB." I said, "I landed first wave on this thing while you were still back in high school eating ice cream."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "We took this island," and I said, I said, "The Army had it for a while, and they named all the airstrips after their heroes." And I said, "Then you Navy guys come in, you rename all the airstrips after your heroes."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "All I want from you is point to where that dang airfield is, and I'll get me on down there." He said, "Now don't get excited, son." He called up a jeep and took me down to
He did.
that airstrip. Yeah.
He helped you. You gained his respect very rapidly.
I certainly did.
That was good. And that was another thing about the Marines. I was always impressed was their demeanor and their take charge attitude and everything, which was good, very good. Well, now, did you get into the Okinawa campaign?
Just the fake landing part.
The fake landing part.
Yes, sir. Suffered more casualties on the L-Day than the troops that landed.
Wow.
Because of the kamikazes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that kamikaze campaign was,
Yes, it was tough.
terrible.
That was tough.
Just,
We did that fake landing 2 days in a row.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
And you absorbed a lot of the kamikaze?
Uh-huh.
Really? The
Yeah.
planes?
Then we got the hell out of Dodge and went back to Saipan.
Oh, my gosh. Well, thank goodness Saipan had been fairly well secured by that time.
Right,
Yeah. So you, but you can claim, you can claim a star for your Okinawa
Oh, yeah.
touchdown.
Yeah.
I should say. And that was still the same outfit that you came out of boot camp with? Same outfit all the way. That's amazing. Because there were a lot of people that were transferred from this to that.
Oh, yeah. Just before this Okinawa operation, they had a mandate that anybody who had left the States by December 31 of 43, 42, whatever, 43 had to have been, it was 2 years, so they were going to rotate them back. I left the States on the 5th of January.
5th of January,
So I missed that one by 5 days.
Wow.
So I got to stay, I think, about another 16 months.
And then you were on a transport coming back to the States, or did you stop off in Pearl on the way back?
None of the above.
None of the above.
After they dropped the atom bomb, then we had to go in and occupy Japan.
Oh, you did?
And our general, the war was over, so I figured, man, I'm a cinch to go home now. I'm the oldest guy out here. Hey, General said, ain't nobody going home. We're going to Nagasaki, full strength. So
For heaven's
I went
sake.
1,500 more miles further away from home.
My word.
But I went to Nagasaki for 30 days.
Well, that's interesting because I thought there were, troops waiting to go in and do that sort of duty, but you guys were just on the front line all the way.
Yep.
Well, that is just amazing, CJ, and this has been a marvelous experience. You came back to the States, got married, had a family.
I came back to the States, got out of the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
and got married, had a family, small family, and then got divorced.
Well, you've had a lot of experiences, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
My goodness sakes. You have children here in town?
Yes, I do. I have a daughter here in town. I have a son that's up in Springboro.
Oh, yeah.
He's married and has 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have another son that's up in the Chicago area. But I haven't communicated with him lately.
Well, that's just great. And of course, you built a new life after the war. And did you have a trade or a career of some sort here in Cincinnati?
Well, no.
Or were you back in New?
After I got out after World War II, got married, divorced, and then I went back in the Marine Corps.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you
I had a 4.5-year break.
re-upped. I'll be darned.
And that's another story.
That's another story. Well, I wish we had time to tell that, because those things are interesting to find out what happens to a person, after the war was over, and then in your case, going back into the Marines. Well, I'm telling you, this has just been a wonderful experience to get your story, and you'll get a DVD of this interview. So your family will always have something to look at about CJ, and hear your voice and see your face and everything. And we thank you so much for your service. God bless, and thank you for coming in and being interviewed.
Well, thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Well, here we are again with Mr. Daigle, and we're just so happy to do that, because he had a remarkable career. And the first half of the interview, we learned about his period in the Pacific, and as a youngster. And then did you say you wanted to go back in and they didn't want to take you because you were too young?
No, they wouldn't promote me.
Oh, they wouldn't promote you. That's it.
Because I was too young.
Yeah. You'd already looked into the jaws of hell.
Oh, yeah.
Well, pick it up there, CJ, and let's talk about what happened where we left off after the first hour.
Well, after I finished my 30-day occupation duty in Nagasaki, Japan, then I was finally scheduled to rotate back to the States. And when I got back, I had 34 months overseas in the South Pacific. I had 37 months in the Marine Corps total. So I said, well, time to go home to see mother and the girls.
Sure.
So I got discharged on December 7th of 1945 at Bainbridge, Maryland, at the Naval Training Center there. Mm-hmm. And they sent me home, and I went back to work in the old shoe factory where I'd worked when I was 16 after school. And,
now you were back in school?
No.
You'd finished school.
I'd quit high school and I'd had enough schooling, I thought. So no, I just went back to work in the shoe factory.
Okay.
And, then I got tangled up with the girl I had left behind me, and that following June we got married. Mm-hmm. But then I found out that she really wasn't the girl I left behind.
Oh my gosh.
But by then it was too late.
How old were you then?
I was 20.
20?
Yeah, I was really getting on in age.
Oh, gee.
But anyhow, we did have a daughter, and finally got a divorce. Mm-hmm. I got a divorce, and went back to the shoe factory, and in the meantime, I managed to join the reserve unit and picked up my sergeant stripes that way. Mm-hmm. And held on to it. And this was in May of 50. The Korea War started in June, so on 1 August we got activated, and I was heading towards Camp Lejeune.
Mm-hmm. Now, were you a gunnery sergeant?
No, it's a buck sergeant.
Okay.
Buck sergeant. And when this 3rd Infantry Battalion out of Boston, when we got to Camp Lejeune, they pulled out about a dozen of us and sent us down to Paris Island as drill instructors.
Oh, DIs.
I was a DI from
Wow.
PI. I did that for 2.5 years.
Hmm.
I was there until April of '52. In the interim, the rest of the troops had already gone to Korea, and I kept writing letters and requesting a transfer. Matter of fact, one Sunday I was out at the little stop where you're, quote, unofficially hitchhiking, and this big old sedan with a #1 tag on it pulled up, and it was the Commanding General,
Oh, boy.
and he's going to take us into town. He asked me how I liked it, and I said, General, there should be a letter on your desk requesting a transfer to Korea. Oh, he says, we need you DIs here. I says, yeah, but this ain't where the promotion is. It's out there. But it didn't, it fell on deaf ears.
Again? Oh, for God's sakes.
Yeah. So the Quantico at that time was overloaded with platoon leaders and officer candidates, and they could not process them through the facilities they had, so they created a special training regiment at Paris Island, which meant a lot of things. They had to set aside 2 of the recruit training battalions as special training units. They had to call in a lot of reserve officers, because when you're dealing with officer candidates, you have to have a lieutenant or better with every platoon. So I got lucky, and a boy from Plymouth, which is 14 miles from my hometown, got to be my platoon leader. And one day he said to me, Daigle, he says, why don't you apply for the OCS? He says, you're certainly smarter than some of these kids. And I said, well, my education will come up a little short. And he says, take the test. I said, what test? He says, they have a 4-year college equivalency, Navy officers selection test. And he said, I have a couple of books I can lend you to study up on it. So 10 years after I quit high school, I boned up for this 4-year college equivalency exam and passed. So then with that and the colonel's recommendation, I got selected to go to Quantico to we did a screening course. There were 75 of us that showed up. And 3 weeks later, 37 of us were commissioned. The rest went back to their parent units. But that's how that came about. But all of this time, the Korean War was going on.
Right.
And I was missing out on all of it. I wasn't really sad about it, but I was missing out on it. So I finally did get orders to go to Korea, and I got there with 90 shooting days left when I got there.
How about that? You almost missed it again.
Almost missed it again. But what was ironic about the whole thing is I wrote a letter to my wife. I'm not much of a letter writer, but I wrote her a letter and I said, I'm out on Outpost Esther, and things are very quiet, nothing going on. Well, she got the letter one day, a couple of weeks later, and that night on the TV came the report that Outpost Esther was overrun, everybody was killed or captured.
Oh, gosh.
And she didn't get another letter from me for 6 weeks,
Good heavens.
saying that I had been relieved the day before that happened. The kid that relieved me got a Navy Cross for that skirmish that night. But again, you know, I was in the right place at the right time. I
certainly were.
get out from under.
You certainly were. So now, at this time, you were what, a shave tail, or were you
Yes, sir.
first lieutenant?
No, I was, see, I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure I was still a second lieutenant.
Second lieutenant,
Yeah.
okay.
But I did make first lieutenant sometime during
While you were
during the
there?
tour. Yes,
Oh, boy.
but after the shooting stopped, then we had 90 days where a truck driver and one officer and a dozen indigenous laborers would go into the DMZ and police up the MLR, main line of resistance. And I've always been kind of a can-do guy, and I got elected to be the guy to go in and tear down the bunkers, salvage the lumber, pick up the weapons, bring all of that stuff back to a bivouac area. But that was kind of a situation.
That must have been interesting. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, every morning about 8 o'clock, we'd board the truck. I did the 10 or 12 Korean laborers, actually. The truck driver and myself were the only two Caucasians, and we drive into the DMZ up to our old position on the line, and then we'd set to work. But I had one Korean lad that was very, very knowledgeable. He must have been an engineering type, and we had communications wire by the hundreds of miles laying all over that place up there, because every night when you'd send a patrol out, they'd lay wire. Okay, so there was wire laying around up there, and this guy was picking up the wire, and if you wanted to move a 12 by 12 to tear down the bunker, he'd just take one 12 by 12 and he'd lay it up alongside, and he'd wrap the two of them together with this comm wire, and then he put 2 or 3 of his men on one end. They'd pop that thing out of the ground like it was nothing at all.
Right.
But we really cleaned that place up in the 90 days. There wasn't anything salvageable left. Of course, we could look over across the way and watch the North Koreans doing exactly the same thing. And, as I say, it was a
Really, really a close affair there.
yeah. You wonder who's going to fire the first shot.
Sure. Sure. Did you have any actual contact with North Korean soldiers?
Not at that time, but later on, like another couple of weeks, then they got ready for the Operation Big Switch, they called it, where we exchanged our POWs for their POWs.
Oh, I see.
And at that time, I got assigned to the MP Battalion. And we set up a perimeter around the base, and we had all these POWs coming, live in the tents overnight. Got a whole new bunch of new ration of clothes, new issue, I should say. And so the next morning they were called out. We were going to send them north over the bridge, and they were going to send our guys south over the bridge. And their guys, when they started walking across the bridge, they stripped down naked and threw all that new clothes away over the edge of the bridge. And they did not want anything that was not North Korean with them. They were, quote, afraid of getting home with any of that gear from us.
My gosh.
That was interesting to watch. They just strip down naked, throw all their clothes away. Brand new clothes. Huh?
Wow. How about that? Did you experience any discomfort from insects or anything like that over there?
Not really. No, it's cold.
Cold.
Cold. Oh, my golly.
Yeah.
When I came back, I said to my wife, I think probably the second thing I said to her was, I don't ever want to be cold if I don't have to.
Yeah.
And, that explains my 23 years in Florida.
So you were there then through the winter,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, 13 months old.
13 months.
Yeah, well, take you through a winter.
Sure, I should say. By that time, things had started to, after the overrun, had started to simmer down a little bit, had they? My goodness, well, that was, you know, and so few people know anything about that.
Yeah,
It's always been the sort of the, you know, as we talked before, the so-called forgotten war. But it was desperate. It was dangerous. It was just terrible.
yep, it sure was.
And we lost so many wonderful men over there. How about your contact with foreign NATO participants? Did you have any of that?
Well, we used to run into, occasionally, we'd run into some of our British friends, New Zealander, Anzacs, Australians. You know, that was...
But
that
they
was,
had Turks and Italians and...
Yeah, yeah. Those
others.
Turkish fighters were very, very, very tough.
Very tough.
They were tough.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
Yeah, that's what I've read too, I should say. Well, now, when, you know, there's always the, being in the service, there's always the part of, you know, when will I be transferred, or when will I be sent back, or that sort of thing. Now, were you working, did you feel that your promotions would help you get a better job, get a better situation? Tell us about your...
well, actually, when I went back in the Corps in May of 50, it was for the long time commitment. I was old enough at that time to get promoted.
I see.
So I did make staff sergeant. Matter of fact, I was waiting to pin on my gunnery stripes because I had passed all the requisite tests when they sent me to Quantico, commissioned me a second lieutenant instead. So
I see.
I was well on my way. I made first lieutenant while I was in Korea, and
Were you, tell us about your transport. Were you flown back or came back by sea, or how?
No, I flew back. Because we spent an overnight in Hawaii. I remember that vaguely. And then we landed at Travis in
California.
outside of San Francisco,
Right.
and that's when I found out that I was actually going back to Paris Island.
Which you knew very well,
But yeah,
inside and out.
yeah. Well, when I got to Paris Island as a first lieutenant now,
Right.
I was a commanding general there by the name of Silverthorne, who had a prior assignment had been as assistant commandant. And then when he finished that job, he came down, they sent him down to Paris Island as commanding general. So he had all of the new officers reporting in to the base for duty. He wanted to interview them. So I reported into the general's office, and he said, "Lieutenant, have you ever been to Paris Island before?" And I said, "Yes, sir, General. I was here when you got here." He said, "How's that?" I said, "I was a Staff Sergeant DI in the 1st Battalion when you took over the command." Yeah. Oh, he says, "Well, there isn't too much I have to tell you about Paris Island, is there?" I said, no, sir, I don't think so. He said, okay, go ahead, get out of here.
Well, I've been to Paris Island in the last 3 or 4 years. I have, my wife has a cousin who is chief of volunteers there at the museum at Paris Island, which is a wonderful museum.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Guys.
Mm-hmm.
And the guides and the docents, you might say, that are there, you know, are all old Marines and really know their stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And know their history. And it's a wonderful place to go. I spent almost a whole day there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you go back to Paris?
Yes, sir. When I was living in Florida, I'd go up there twice a year,
Mm-hmm.
just for practice.
How about Lejeune?
Same thing.
Same thing?
Yeah.
They're not too
Oh, I
far.
tried to. Lejeune, we went on November 20th, which is Tarawa Day, and they had a reunion every year.
Wow.
One of the regiments would host the group, and it started out with 200 or 300 of us. 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, would have been '08. There were only 12 people that were able to show up, and kind of melancholy, to say the least.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then February 1st is the official birthday of the 2nd Marine Division.
I see.
So those are the 2 dates that I tried to make it up to Camp Lejeune.
Tell us about some of the famous Marines that you came in contact with.
Well, let's see.
Any of the generals that fought in
Good
the
Lord, yes.
Solomons and so forth?
Yeah, the parade ground at Paris Island is called the Oscar Petros Parade Deck. That's the name of the facility. Well, Oscar Petros, as a second lieutenant, was a member of the raiders that went to Macon.
Oh, yeah.
And little funny story, Oscar related to some of us who were closer friends than others of us. And he said when they got off the submarine and into their rubber boats, the officer of the deck said, steer 218 relative or whatever. And they started paddling their rubber boats. After about 15 minutes, Oscar said, hold up a minute. He said, we should be hearing some surf by now. And they weren't hearing anything. So he said, okay, let's turn around and go back. So they went back. Sure enough, they came up alongside of the submarine. And he asked the officer of the deck, which way is the beach? And he gave him 218 relative. And he says, jackass, don't give me a compass reading when I'm laying alongside a submarine. Point.
Right.
Oh, needless to say, Oscar's boat landed a little late and a little off course.
I'll say.
But that was one of the generals. I met General Shoup several times.
Did you really?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Boy, he was legendary.
Yes, he was. Yeah, and the ironic part of the thing is he stepped into that job accidentally because one of the regimental commanders, there were 3 infantry regiments in the division, and one of them was ailing. Let that story die right there. And so they had to replace him. Well, under normal circumstances, you would replace a sick officer with his executive officer. But General Smith, Julian Smith, had been around the Marine Corps for some 30-odd years. And he had a lot of faith in General Shoup, who had been the G3, drawing up the plans for the Tarawa invasion. He knew where every man and bullet was. So he spot promoted him from lieutenant colonel to colonel and gave him the regiment. And that's how General Shoup ended up with his Medal of Honor.
Wow.
Right man, the right place at the right time.
Absolutely. And, you know, let's face it, that's what it takes. You can be the bravest man in the world and not be recognized, you know, which is ironic. By that time, was Puller still around?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Chesty.
Chesty, yeah. Yeah, he got his 5th Navy Cross in
Just imagine.
in Korea. Yeah, yeah. Well, one night in the Guadalcanal, Chesty had the regiment and 2 of his men, Mitch Page, who went on to become a colonel, and John Battalion. They were both machine gun section leaders in the night of all hell broke loose. Well, Chesty put both of them up for Medals of Honor, and his boss put him up for Medal of Honor.
Right.
Well, the 2 enlisted men got theirs. Chesty's was downgraded to a 3rd or 4th Navy Cross.
Right. I know, it's interesting how those things happen.
Yeah.
So, did you ever meet Battalion?
No, he got killed before I
He
had
was
it.
killed at Ewell, wasn't he?
Yes, he was killed
Yeah,
in Ewell.
yeah.
But we were like, you know, he was on the other end of Saipan from where I was.
Oh, I see.
I was with the 2nd Division on the left flank. He was with the 4th Division on the right flank. So we were.
And you're bringing up Saipan again, that, going back, of course, but I've just been reading another book about that campaign. And did you have close contact with the Japanese citizens that were on Saipan or any of the Marianas natives?
Only to the extent when they all gathered up at Marpy Point at the north end of the island and started jumping off the cliff. That was as close a contact as we had with them.
I see. Yeah.
But it was horrible. It was really,
horrible.
really horrible.
Yeah. They were
Brainwashed.
brainwashed and loyal to the end.
Yeah, yeah. They were just afraid of Marines.
Yeah. Yes, of course, that propaganda had been put out. There was, I thought of you the other night too on Channel 48 on PBS. They had the story about Robert Oppenheimer, who developed the first A-bomb.
Yep.
And talking about that and the political ramifications and everything, and what he went through, because he had been, at one time as a youngster, had been a member of the Communist Party.
Yeah.
And here they had him working on this, but he was a dedicated American.
Yes. Yeah.
I certainly appreciate that. And I thought about you, and you saw,
End results.
huh?
The end results.
Yes, you saw
yes.
you saw
Firsthand.
Hiroshima and Nagasaki too, both of
Yeah.
them.
Yep.
Afterwards. Goodness sakes! Oh my gosh, it must have been horrible. Well, you've had such a rich experience. I've never met anybody that's had the kind of experience that you have, and somebody has had parts of what you've done and so forth, but not the overall.
I think at this point in time, it's worth mentioning that during WW2, all the way through WW2, I was a machine gunner. In Korea, I had a machine gun platoon. And when we were finished up my 13-month tour there, between W2 and Korea, I never got a scratch.
Isn't that amazing?
For a machine gunner, that's
For a machine gun.
unusual,
Oh, yeah.
because you're
You
a
were on the
high-value
front-
target. Yeah,
You were up front. Absolutely.
yeah. When you're a high-value target, when that machine gun starts, they start aiming in.
Oh, boy, I'll say, when they find out where you are,
Yeah, but I
you're
never,
the target.
never got a scratch.
Isn't that amazing? Did you ever experience enemy snipers from up in trees or anything like that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Oh, my God. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, they had a habit of tying themselves into the trees. Just now, we're going back to WW2 actually,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
you know, they fire around. They had smokeless ammo, so it was kind of difficult to pick them up. But when you pick them up, normally it'd be in a palm tree, and you fire a burst up into the palm tree, and if you hit him, they had armored vests on. But theirs were just plates put in the pockets.
Oh, I see.
Okay, they had a vest and they had all kinds of sewn pockets,
Sure.
and they put these armor plates in there. But when one 30 caliber bullet hit that plate, it kind of flattened out some, pushed him out like a big old boy was really hitting on him.
Gosh.
And they would go up in the air and then drop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And if he didn't drop, he was suspended by the rope.
Yes, I wondered about the bonds that held him. Oh, my goodness, yes. Well, tell us about some of the awards you received.
Well, not being one in a rich environment, I didn't get a whole lot. I'm really proud of the fact that I got a combat action ribbon, which is the Marine Corps' equivalent of the combat infantry badge in the Army, and I have third award on that.
Wow.
We got Presidential Unit Citation in WW2. We got one in Korea. Navy Unit Commendation.
Right.
And then the Koreans have finally got approval to issue us a Republic of Korea medal. In Vietnam, we got several civil action and cross of gallantry type things.
I bet you got good conduct medal too.
I did get one good conduct. I had just enough time in to get a good conduct, and I wore it proudly because it tells everybody that knows how to read medals
Yes.
that I was an enlisted man. I am a Mustang.
I know, I am too, and I'm proud of it
Yes, sir.
because, you know, you feel that, well, you've done the boots and you know, you've done the grunt work
Yep.
as well as getting
Yeah.
farther up the line. Well, that period of time that you were there in Korea, things were beginning to wind down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a matter of fact, the ceasefire came into
The ceasefire
into
had-
place. Yeah.
Had been
Yeah.
installed.
Yeah.
And so then you had, what, cleanup duty to do?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Cleaned up the MLR. That was a 90-day assignment.
90 days.
Yeah. And by then, my tour was pretty close to being over.
Mm-hmm.
So I got ready to come back to the good old U.S. of A.
Now, when you came back, what were you thinking about in your future? Staying in the Corps?
Oh yeah, there was never a doubt in my mind.
Okay.
Never a doubt in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So
Tell us about your movement up through the ranks, captain, major, and so forth?
Well, I'm trying to recall where I was when I made captain. I was back at Paris Island. When I came back from Korea, they sent me back to Paris Island. I made captain down there. And then with the war over, the shooting part of it over, anyhow, we hit a stop in the promotion cycle. And I was a captain for 9 years.
Wow.
Because they would just promote a few majors off the top, a few more next year to fill. So I thought when they made me a permanent captain, they really meant it.
This was as far as you were going to get.
But no, I finally did make major,
Break over.
and that was quite a.
What's the difference between the duties of a captain and the major?
Well, normally a major is into a more supervisory position, like you're the XO of a battalion or some other staff officer or things of that nature, where a captain is in charge of a rifle company or something, you know, more hands-on than a supervisory thing.
How many in a company?
Captains, just one.
No, how many troops in a
Oh, about 237 at that time. Might, you know, it goes up and down with every war. They change the numbers around.
Yeah, but it's from what I've read, and it was this way in the Navy too. Of course, a captain in the Navy and a captain in the Marines and Army are not the same, not the same, and a lot of people get confused on that. But the difference in responsibility is tremendous. And of course, as a captain, in charge of you know, maybe almost 150 troops, that is a tremendous responsibility.
It certainly is, yep.
My goodness.
Yep.
Would you have, what officers would you have beneath you?
Well, you'd have the 4, 5, 6 lieutenants.
Okay.
The 3 rifle platoons, the headquarters section, and the machine gun or weapons outfit would help you, would you?
Right. So you were, the type of artillery you had was, besides of course, your 50 caliber machine guns, that was in World War II, but did you have mortars and small cannon and so forth, or?
Yeah, I got an interesting story that goes with
Good,
that.
that's what we want.
We had, in the company, we had 60 millimeter mortars. And then at the battalion level, they had 81s. Well, while I was on this outpost duty one night, or one morning actually, we'd had turkey dinners delivered to us on the nightly patrol. Well, normally we eat that meal the next morning. Well, for one reason or another, I don't know how it happened, but the turkey went bad, and all our boys, a lot of our boys came down with ptomaine poisoning.
Oh my gosh.
And we're on an outpost, so the only way we can get these lads evacuated for medical assistance is if we can smoke in the whole outpost. And and they sent troops out to bring them back. So they told me that I was going to register. There'd be 4 deuce mortars firing on this side. It'd be 75s across the back, 81s on the left, and 105s and 155s across the front. That would make it a square.
You had a
Well,
big fortress
I
there.
I started adjusting fire. They'd fire around, I'd tell them which way it was, how far off, then they would adjust it. And when we got the one done, then we'd go to the next one, next one. Well, you know, when we got to the 105s and the 155s, guy threw out a round and it looked like it was a mile away. So I told him to drop 100 or whatever. And he landed one in the front trench.
Oh, my.
And I said, that one's a little short. I said, you put it in our front trench. He said, have you ever adjusted fire are you an FO for 1.5? I said, hell no, I'm at the damn rifle company commander with rifles. Oh, he says, we forgot to take that into consideration.
Oh, gee whiz.
But needless to say, boy, from there on, boy, we got it adjusted in good shape. So then everybody started shooting at the same time.
Sure.
And we got smoked in, and they were able to send a rescue party out to evacuate sick people.
My goodness sakes, my goodness.
So there were all kinds of little
Yeah.
funnies that happened to.
So-called friendly fire.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah.
Not friendly at all. Did you have any experience with the North Korean Air Force, their planes, the MiGs, or anything like that?
No, I saved that for the Vietnamese.
Okay. Good for you.
Incidentally, speaking of generals as we were a while back, General Gray, Alfred Gray, who was the first Marine to go from private to commandant.
No kidding.
He was in office the same time that Admiral Buda, who was a Navy equivalent of seaman to CNO. But Al and I still communicate with each other. We were commissioned at the same time.
I'll be darned. And how's he doing?
He's doing fine.
He's good health?
On a few boards. Yeah, he's very good health.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd never had any contact personally with them, but I'd heard, I remember when Kulak was commandant about 20 years ago, and I heard him speak once he spoke at the Naval Institute there in Annapolis at its annual meeting one year that I attended. And of course, those Kulak brothers, you know, they were fierce.
Oh, that was father-son.
Father, son?
Yes.
Oh, that was it. Okay, okay. That's right, yeah, yeah. And the son was just as fierce as the father.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the Corps just turned out so many outstanding men like you and so many others, and it's interesting to read about those people and their state of mind and how did you feel about killing a human being?
Well, that thought per se didn't really cross my mind. The thing that crossed my mind was that rascal trying to kill me. I'm
Yeah.
going to get him before he gets me.
That's right.
And that was
Survival.
that was about the extent of it. I had no remorse,
Yeah.
and I was never. I won't say I wasn't afraid. I was afraid plenty, but
Okay,
I wasn't afraid of dying. I was just afraid of, getting hit. But other than that, why?
Well, that's something that's hard for people who have not had any military experience to understand, because and that's what war's all about.
Yeah.
I mean, you kill the enemy, you win the war.
Yeah,
You win the war and things are over.
yeah,
And it's just hard for some people to understand
yeah.
that.
Then go home and make babies.
Yeah, right. And then especially things like the A-bombs, you know. And I mean, we had to save ourselves. We had to, you know, take charge but it's hard for some people to understand that. Again, the type of terrain you were in there in Korea, were you in the rough mountainous area?
Yes, sir. Very much.
Wow.
Yeah, and it really didn't matter. You know, you could climb the hill in front of you, but when you got to the top, there was another one out in front of it. It was just, you know, one hill after another.
Endless.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah. I guess just like working your way through the Rockies.
yeah, I should say. How about your personal equipment? Your field uniforms, your boots, things like that. You had
Inadequate for the weather.
inadequate for the weather.
Oh,
They did
God,
not
yeah.
count on that weather.
I didn't know that we didn't have anything that was warm enough for that cold.
Wow.
That's just terrible.
Oh my gosh. You didn't get frostbite or anything, did you?
No.
Yeah. Well, that was a very, of course, a very common problem in those days.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess there are still some MIAs in Korea.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Not much we can do about it, I guess. You wonder about people like that who don't step forward if they have an opportunity.
Yep.
Maybe they had something in their background that they were not proud of, or did you know anybody like that that you lost?
No.
No. Well, I'll bet you've got a million stories, though. Funny incidents, particularly in the Marines, because the Marines were such a special breed, and in most cases had good sense of humor and were tough.
Yep.
And brothers in the bond.
You know, we were talking about generals a bit ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're aware of this. It's historical in nature, but until 1916, officers were not eligible to get the Medal of Honor.
By George, I don't think I knew that.
Well, they approved officers in 1916, and believe it or not, right around the corner came the Battle of Veracruz.
Mexico.
It was a 3-day skirmish, and 6 Marine officers got Medals of Honor.
How about that?
Well, it was almost an embarrassment to the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But further study, all 6 of those officers went on to become general officers.
Did they really?
All 6 of them.
Isn't
Not a bad seed in the lot.
No. So they were really deserving.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, that was. I thought that's a little known fact, but
That's a great thing to know. I didn't know that. I knew that through the Civil War, the Medal of Honor winners were all enlisted men. I mean, your big top generals didn't get it.
well, you know, we had 2 Marines that had received 2 Medals of Honor. Smedley Butler
Oh yeah.
and Dan Daly. And Dan Daly was recommended for a 3rd Medal of Honor in WW1, and it was downgraded to a a Distinguished Service Medal. And Smedley was recommended by the British for a Victoria Cross.
Wow.
And the dispatch came back from headquarters in London or wherever they have their military headquarters. You Turkey, you have to be a British subject to get a Victoria Cross.
Of course.
But shows you what kind of a warrior the man was.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
He was legendary.
Yep. Well, he was the chief of public safety in Philadelphia, you know.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, he was the chief of police.
Chief of police.
Yeah.
How about that?
He had Ben Franklin Building is the tallest thing in Philadelphia. And what Smedley was proposing was they put a rotating beacon up on Ben Franklin's statue. And when you could see green on Broad Street, everybody could go sailing up and down Broad Street, and all the side streets would stop. And then when it turned to red, then all of the side streets. Didn't work out that
Didn't
way,
work.
but the idea was good.
Not too practical, but
Yeah.
a brilliant idea,
Yeah.
I should say. Well, were there any World War I veterans in World War II that you might have come in contact with, or anybody that fought in the Argonne Forest or Belleau Wood or anything like
Well,
that?
all of our general officers were all WW1.
Oh, they were.
Oh yeah, all of our generals were. Oh, General Holcomb was the commandant. General Cates went on to be commandant. General Shepard went on to be commandant. And then there was a whole covey of them that went on to be.
Well, it's truly a remarkable part of our history, and I know, having been aboard the old Ironside several times in Boston, and of course
Several times.
yeah, as a matter of fact, I was very lucky. I got on the 4th of July about 15 years ago. I got a special pass to get aboard
Made the
for
cruise.
the turnaround.
Done a turnaround.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah. That was really something. But that unit, the old Ironsides, the Constitution, of course had Marines aboard, and they fought with sabers, and of course they had the leather collars, getting the nickname Leatherneck.
Yeah.
Again, in Korea, which is so fascinating, CJ, that people will be so glad to see your DVD and to hear your stories about this, because you have truly served so faithfully and so strongly, and anybody that learns about your story will be very proud to know you, and that is one of the great things about this program, to get it out, because as you know, we've lost so many people that never got their story told.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's really sad, because have you got anything else in mind that you'd like to tell us about, about Chow or Liberty in Honolulu or anything like that?
No, I had one when they asked me now, says, well, when did you go into the Marine Corps? Because it seems like, you know, an afterlife type thing. And I said, well, let me put it to you this way. When I went into the Corps, Moses was in charge of Parris Island. We had a General Emil P. Moses,
No kidding.
who was the commanding general at Parris Island when I went down there
How
in
about that?
1942. He retired in May of '44. He was over age.
Sure.
But,
But he
Moses was in charge when I went to
Moses
boot
was in
camp.
That's a good one. That's a good one. That shows your good sense of humor, too.
Oh yeah, that's, you know,
Well, there's been a lot written, of course, about the old breed. And people like Sledge and Battalion, you know, those great heroes.
yeah.
And Battalion had a brother, you know, who was a Marine also. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah,
No.
there were two Battalion boys in the Marine Corps.
Yeah,
at
I
the
did know that.
At the same time.
Yeah.
And of course, Battalion sadly got killed on Iwo. You never got to Iwo, did you?
No.
I didn't either. I got, by that time, that was February of '45, yeah.
Yeah, well, I was getting ready for April 1st in Okinawa.
Sure. We got a couple of minutes. You got any story about Okinawa?
Not particularly, other than the fact that the unit that I was with, we were tasked with making the fake landing on the southeast coast
Okay.
of Okinawa, which in actuality did draw troops down there, and the actual invasion troops didn't suffer a casualty on D-Day, where we got hit with kamikazes in our LSTs.
Wow.
So there's no safe place in war.
Oh, no.
That's a misnomer. to
And
say
everything is unexpected, you know, even
Yeah.
the most well-planned
that. Oh God.
operation
Yeah.
is
Well,
unexpected turnouts.
Murphy's Law.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it can go
Yeah.
wrong, it will go wrong.
Oh, I know it. I know that. It's just amazing. Well, again, I love going to Parris Island and seeing the raw recruits on the grinder, you know, and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's such a great tradition. Well, you have been you've been a star interviewee as well as a star general, and we thank you for everything that you've done and everything you've accomplished and how you've stood up for your country and shown the greatest spirit and bravery of anybody we've known. And we want to thank you for that. God bless.
Thank you.
And keep them flying.
Well, my name is Emil Dansker, and I'm an interviewer for the Veterans History Project. And we're at the main library in Cincinnati. And today we're talking with C.J. Daigle, one of my fellow Marines.
Yes, sir.
And that's quite a feeling to be talking to somebody who was really in the old Corps. Started in World War II and then spent some time in Korea. And what we're going to be talking about especially today is your Vietnam service, because we know that Ted Gardner, the late Ted, unfortunately, fine guy he did more than 150 of these, you know. And I'm proud to sort of pick up the torch. as it were. And you know, of course, his Navy service too
Yes.
was quite something. Well, so now we know that you were, and I don't never talked to anybody who was in all three of those. But World War, you must have been pretty young when you went into World War II.
17.
So 17 then. And now we're going to jump over Korea and talk particularly about your service in Vietnam. And that I didn't make Vietnam. I may run that in if it fits a little bit later. But tell us about that.
Okay, well, first off, I landed at in Okinawa on a Friday night, Kadena. I landed there on a Friday night with my orders for a 13-month tour in Okinawa. The adjutant of the unit came down to pick me up, and he said the division had their orders. Well, having just finished junior school in Quantico, I pretty much knew where we were going to be going because that was part of our education in Quantico. So I said, when? He said, Sunday morning. And this is Friday night. Sunday morning we're sailing.
Well, they give you so long, so much time in there.
But that was my introduction to, I'm going to Vietnam for 13 months.
And after that was, of course, after your OC training then.
Oh, golly, yeah, I was a major by then.
Oh.
Oh, I had my OC training back before Korea.
Yeah, that's of course, we both knew a lot of those guys. I knew people who were at the Chosin, at the reservoir.
Oh, yeah.
Did you get there, by the way? Were you?
No, I was pushing recruits around that Island at that time.
You know that story about the Chesty would stand up, expose himself to fire and say, put a little fire on those people over there. They talked about him.
Yeah.
I knew people who knew him very well. But Vietnam, you went to Vietnam then in what year?
1965. March the 7th, I believe it was, when President Johnson ordered the initial buildup of troops. I went into Da Nang and then reloaded the ship and went down to Chulai and opened up that base. Now, in junior school, we had an offshore island to build a small enclave on. But in real life, we did it at Chulai. We built a short airfield for tactical support. We did it at Chulai. Now, Chulai was beach. I mean, we landed on the beach. That sand ran 14 miles inland.
Is that so? And you had to slog through that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we built the supply dump there. By that time, I was into supply. We had been the old part of the service battalion, but they created a force logistics group, and that's what I did.
And you were a major by that time, you say?
Correct.
Yeah. So it took you, oh my goodness, we won't stop to think how many years it took, but of course you went through the system anyway.
Yep.
And a lot of these kids that you had to deal with, and they probably really looked up to the old Corps, huh?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
They still do, believe it or not. They still do. It's gratifying to see that these young kids, boy, they'll hang on to every word. Yeah, matter of fact, I have another meeting with some of the boys from Moeller High School. This would be my 5th time talking to those lads.
At Moeller?
Yeah. No, I don't do it at Moeller. I go out to Miami Town to the conservation area that they have out there.
And you must do a lot of that then, not just Moeller. Other schools?
Oh no, I go to a lot of schools.
Yeah. Do you go to the veterans group that meets at the IHOP on the Coleraine?
Certainly.
Yeah. We've probably seen each other there and not.
Yeah, well, I haven't been for a year because we have a lawsuit filed against IHOP. My wife had a slip and fall accident there, and
yeah. Well, my wife is about to have hip surgery. I'm going to have to deal with that. But you know, as old Marines can handle anything.
Oh yeah, yeah.
One thing and another. So after you got over there, and we've got you through setting up a supply base.
Yes, sir.
And how did that go? And follow along there.
Okay. Well, it went quite well actually. We found out that the the terrain, etc., was very difficult on our moving equipment. We had the rough terrain forklifts, which were hinged in the middle, and we had a lot of downtime with them because sand was getting to them. So I grabbed this young corporal that was in charge of the forklifts, and I said, every noontime, I want to see a parade of them forklifts going down to the motor pool for a monthly checkup every day.
Yeah.
And on Saturdays, I want to see them do the same thing for a quarterly inspection and repair. That way, we kept those vehicles working 24 hours a day, with that exception of that
That's
one
all.
12 to 1 when they were rehabbing them.
Did you say whether you used helicopter airlift too for some of that equipment?
We didn't need it, and we didn't have it in our supply dump, but it was available.
Yeah. You must have had a lot of young timers and old timers in that group.
Not too many old timers anymore, but we had a lot of youngsters. Of course, see, my age at that time was about 38, and there weren't a lot of guys around that were in that age bracket.
So they probably called you Grandpa.
Well, more or less. They called me a lot of things. That was one of them.
Oh, it did, yeah. Yeah, I know a fellow whose father was the B-17 pilot in his 30s, which was unusual, and they called him Grandpa. Those guys.
One interesting thing, though, when I was down there, I got an opportunity to be a courier back to Okinawa. Ran the mail route back up to Okinawa. Well, the one that I ran happened to be over my daughter's birthday back in the States. So I made a connection with the Mars radio. They didn't have any of this instant communications in those days. So we used the Mars radio, and I got my daughter on the phone at the other end. She was in Massachusetts. Got her on the phone, and I talked to her, wished her a happy birthday, and I said over, and the boys all switched. They flipped the switch from send to receive. And that little girl was crying. Talking to her daddy, she was crying all the time.
And how old was she?
It was her 10th birthday. And I had sent her an ID card with everything signed, ready for her to have her picture taken. And we could have taken over to the nearest Naval Air Station and get that card issued for her 10th birthday. That's a big thing for the military brats.
Yeah.
When they get to be 10, they get their own ID card. She was tickled to death with that, but she was crying so much she couldn't answer up.
Talk to Dad. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 with this wife. I have a boy, girl, boy. I had a daughter with the first wife, but we'll let that one go.
So that's how many then? Oh, that's how many?
It's 4.
Kids? 4 also, yeah. And any Marines in there?
No, sir. No, sir.
No?
No.
Well, in our history, we have a grandson who's Navy, and his other grandfather was a Marine, and we couldn't talk him into the Corps for some reason.
No, I never tried to talk anybody into the Corps. Because every time something goes wrong, they blame me.
Which they probably did anyway, you know.
Yeah.
I had a situation once. We had a little green pickup truck in our office, and I took it out one day and I forgot to fill it gas, and I happened to be on the base, and I had a little problem there when the gunny in command of the motor pool came by, and of course he checked the oil, and fortunately I had a captain who got me out of that. You know, but what else can we say about, well, of course, in my experience too, maybe I should throw this in, that as close as I got to Nam was in '54, when the scuttlebutt was that the Corps was going to go into Dien Bien Phu. And we didn't know for 20 years that's exactly what they were talking about. And since my MOS was combat correspondent, I probably would have been there to meet them. So what were you doing at that time? Did you go the surface right on through then?
Oh, yeah.
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 So what were you doing at that time?
I was a supply officer and a logistician. But
And where then? The supply officer was where?
In Vietnam.
Uh-huh.
And we built the supply dump and kept the things going.
Yeah.
We had General Karch was in charge at that point in time. They hadn't brought the whole division in, so we had a one-star who was in charge of the operation, and he had managed to get a ice cream machine set up with the necessary ice and et cetera. And he sent back for a priority 1 little Dixie cups.
Uh-huh.
Well, one of my friends from years ago was the expediter for plane load of supplies leaving Okinawa to fly to Vietnam. And he saw the Dixie cups on the manifest for priority shipment. And he says, hey, no way, those things got priority. Pull them off.
Uh-huh.
Well, when the shipment got to Da Nang and the cups went there, the general went ballistic. I mean, he wanted to know who in the hell had sidetracked his request for the Dixie cups, because he was ready to pour ice cream out, feed all the troops. No cups to put them in.
Yeah. So what'd you do then?
I didn't do anything. I watched the general get on the plane and fly back to Okinawa to find this young major who had short-stopped his Dixie cups. Well, that young major, as a PFC, had earned the Medal of Honor on Iwo Jima. That kind of saved his butt.
Yeah.
But the general was still PO'd at the whole outfit.
Did he get the Dixie cups then?
He got
second
the
round.
Dixie cups.
Yeah. That sounds like, something you think that you don't usually associate the Marines with that. But on the other hand, at Lejeune, when I was there, we had an ice cream plant and we had a bakery, and they closed that down, I think, eventually. They thought that was not the kind of thing that the Marines ought to be spending their time doing. But we had a sea lawyer in our office who could, you want something, you call him. I wanted, one day we're doing a story on the ice cream plant, and wanted I said, get me a red-headed woman Marine with freckles eating a strawberry ice cream cone. And he did. This guy.
Yeah, we got one of each in the Marine Corps, that's for dang sure.
Yeah. So what, what else can you say about Vietnam? You sound like that's what you did. You went after Dixie cups.
Well, no, there was another occasion where the colonel called me in one day. I was the S4 of the detachment down there. He called me in and says, we got to get these telephone lines buried. He said, tanks, half-tracks, whatever, are just tearing up the communications every day. So he says, we got to get these things over. I want you to get it buried. So I started with a ditch witch, and we started digging. And we were digging along, and all of a sudden the operator says, "Uh-oh." I was, what do you mean, uh-oh?
Yeah.
He says, I think I just eat up a cable. Well, we secured for the day, went back to the compound, and sure enough, the Da Nang Air Base was shut down. We had chewed up their radar cable. There were a lot of unhappy folks around dodge.
But in your job, really, you know, we used to say if you see a Marine doing something he's not supposed to be, he's probably public information, which is actually what I was doing. But also, if we needed something, we did it. You've already talked a little bit about that, about what you had to do, the lines and the Dixie cups, if you will.
Yeah.
But you must have had some rush orders coming from the MLR, maybe.
Well, no, there was no MLR. We were just, you know, we had a defensive posture around the supply dump.
No main line of resistance.
No. That a month, 6 weeks later, Colonel called me and we said, we still have to get those lines buried. And he says, instead of coming through here, go down there, etc. Well, the way he wanted it to go was right down past a maintenance shack that the Air Force was operating. And they had a lieutenant colonel maintenance officer. So I went down and told him exactly what our plans were, showed him the map and what our route was. And I asked him if they had any cables, buried cables in that vicinity. He said, no. I said, would you put that in writing? No problem. So we put it in writing that they had no buried cables in the area that I was going to be digging in. Well, we started digging, and just sure enough, my young lad says, uh-oh, and we damn sure found another cable that shut down the radar at the Da Nang Air Base. Now, in those days, we're talking early 65, the Da Nang airstrip was the biggest airport with takeoffs and landings in the world. And I shut it down twice. So the second time, the colonel says, I have no recourse but to convene a board of inquiry. Well, board of inquiry is similar to a grand jury getting to prepare the indictment for a general court-martial. So they convened the board and went through their routine and ritual of setting it up. And then when they called upon myself, I said, before we proceed with this, I said, I think you all ought to read this letter that I had from the Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, in which the Air Force stated there were no cables buried where I was planning to dig. Well, that ended the Board of Inquiry right there.
And when you had it in writing.
I had it in writing. But if I had not had that thing, I would have been up before a general court just quicker than you could say, he's guilty. I think the North Vietnamese were looking for me to decorate me.
Oh, for that anyway. Gosh. Well, did you get up to the fighting area, the combat areas?
July was a combat area.
Well, I would say, yeah, that's true. They could always get in there, but did you get out of the supply area?
No.
Get further up?
No. Yeah. After a bit of time down in July, then I got transferred up to the home office in Da Nang. Yeah. And continued the job as S4 of the whole group up there.
One of my friends was an artillery officer, Army he was, and he said he arrived at a fire base. He was to take command, and as he was jumping out of the helicopter went up. So he said that was a not very auspicious way to land at your new command. Right. Did you ever run into anything, stuff like that?
No.
Experiences?
No.
You just did what you had to do and went through it.
Yeah, very low key. Very low key.
Yeah.
Do the job to the best of your ability.
Well, we know you've already done a lot of talking about World War II and Korea, but how does your time then in Vietnam compare with the service you had in Korea and World War II?
Well, Vietnam was more political than Korea had been.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, there was unrealistic requests from the politicians that just didn't make any sense at all to the poor mud marine out in the field.
Mm-hmm.
But you had no choice but to take care of them. Like they wanted to know what your ammo count was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, what's your ammo count for the day.
Every day,
Every day.
the forward units
Yeah,
had to send this back to you,
yeah,
and then you had to fill it in for the next day?
yeah. Well, no, the big thing is you had to consolidate it, send it on back to the head,
Yeah.
to the headquarters.
Uh-huh. Well, there again, you must have been, we were 17 when you went in the first time, and what did they do with you at that point? What was your assignment as a new recruit in World War II?
After I went overseas, did some jungle training in Samoa, and then went to New Zealand. That was the first replacements that they had since Guadalcanal.
Uh-huh.
And I got assigned to a machine gun platoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed in that machine gun platoon all the way through the whole war.
Uh-huh. And that's something to manage to survive that.
Yes.
One of my cousins' first billet out of OC was a platoon, machine gun platoon. And he said it's a good thing he was transferred out of that or he wouldn't have survived the war. But he made the Iwo landing as a company commander finally.
Yeah.
Eventually he got a commission. Mm-hmm. And then Korea?
Mm-hmm. In Korea, I had the machine gun platoon.
Yeah, uh-huh. And you were on active duty all this time? You didn't have any...
I took a break after WW2.
Uh-huh.
I took a 4-year break. I got out December 7th of 45.
Mm-hmm.
Came back into the reserves in May of 50. So I was,
Mm-hmm.
and picked up my sergeant's stripes, went to active duty, and sent me to Paris Island as a DI.
Uh-huh.
I was old Corps by then.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they say I knew some of those guys a few years later. And then, so you were then right straight through from that time and eventually
Yes, yeah,
got
from May of 50 on, I stayed
Uh-huh.
active duty.
your assignment. When did you actually go to OCS?
At Quantico.
Uh-huh. And when was that?
Well, I went in April of 52.
Mm-hmm.
75 of us were sent from various posts around the country as meritorious NCOs. And we went to, they had set up a screening course at Quantico. Like, we had a captain as a squad leader. Okay, 3 25-man squads.
Mm-hmm.
And every day we'd have a different kind of a problem or whatever, hike, PT, the whole 9 yards. And you would get evaluated on the day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this went on for 3 weeks, and they rotated the squad leaders, so that all 3 of them had a shot at you.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of 3 weeks of the 75, 37 of us got commissioned.
Mm-hmm. We must have known some of the same people then. I had a Lieutenant Sauls and a Sergeant, for Pete's sake, now I forget his name. But yeah, that was a bit of an experience when people talk about how it was. My wife will say, how was it? And talk about the time I saw, if you ever knew if a guy turned green if he ate a cigar, well, I can testify that he did, not me.
Uh-huh.
And then eating a whole box of candy, a pogey bait,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Did you guys do some of that stuff to your people?
Well, no.
Yeah, had to get them. You didn't, huh?
I went through the screening course. 37 of us got commissioned,
Uh-huh.
and the week before, the 6th screening course had gotten their commissions, and one of them was the Sergeant Al Gray,
Mm-hmm.
who went on to become the
I
commandant.
remember, yeah. It was quite something. And so then you went out of, you went back, you continued on active duty, and when did you become even, let's see, you were still a sergeant at that point, so you had to become a first lieutenant somewhere in there, or second?
Second lieutenant.
Second,
May
yeah.
22nd of 52.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to Lejeune, then I went to Korea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that Vietnam experience, if we jump to that, quite go back to it, I guess. What would you say? We haven't put this question this way, in a way, as to what was the difference between World War II and Korea and Vietnam?
Well, in WW2, if the guy was in front of you, he was an enemy when we landed on the islands, okay? In Korea, it got to be a little touch and go because there's no way you can tell a North Korean from a South Korean, other than the uniform. Well, yeah, if they swap uniforms, you're lost, So it became a little bit more difficult there to wage the war. But when it got to Vietnam, it was impossible. It was just terrible.
Maybe it was more like Afghanistan and Iraq now, where it's hard to tell.
Yes,
you
right.
talk to the guys who have been over there?
Yes, I have.
Did they come to you for advice?
Yeah. No, they don't. But I give it to them anyhow.
Uh-huh, okay.
You know, back in 29 and 30, the Marine Corps wrote the Small Wars Manual, and that's what Afghanistan and Iraq and all these other, that's what that is. It's a small war.
Mm-hmm.
And we wrote the manual on it, but the Army don't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I've read some about that too, about the guys who were in, and again knew some of the guys who were in back in those days. Some of the people who were in the chosen. Were you in the chosen few, by the way? Did I ask that specifically?
You asked. I was a DI.
Oh, that's right. During that particular period, yeah, getting ready for that, yeah. I got an invitation once to go to a sunset parade for General Davis, and I wonder how me. Well, it turned out that since I was on and active duty during that Korean period, that they invited me and members of the Combat Correspondence Association to come there and watch the parade, which is, of course, I'm sure you've seen it more than once.
I was there.
Uh-huh.
I have the invite at home.
Yeah.
My wife and I were there.
Uh-huh.
We were stationed at probably Camp Lejeune at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And we got invited up, so we went.
For General Davis?
Yes.
Well, you were probably a different place than we were. You must have been, what rate were you there? Rank were you there?
Major.
At that time?
Yeah.
Major, yeah.
Yeah, I was off with the peons.
Uh-huh. And we were over in the bleachers. I took my daughter and son-in-law and a couple of the kids, including the kid who later went in the Navy, went there. So there again, we sort of go back to the idea. You've got a solid piece of service in the Marine Corps, as I well know, and we've talked about. Tell us about it. Anything else? One of the things that I've always liked to say is, what is a question that you would like to be asked so you could answer it? Do you have one of those? What you'd like to say?
Well, first off, keep my daughter happy. I have to say that she, for her first time, she was 10 years old, we went through that one. She was living in a civilian community, which her mother and I were born and raised up there. Well, my daughter was born in the Naval Hospital at Paris Island.
Yeah, that's so.
On December 7th.
Is that so? And what year was that?
Oh,
And which December 7th was that? Not 41.
About 60, 61, something
Uh-huh.
like that.
Like
But
that.
anyhow, when she went to school, she had to make all the new classmates, etc. And little kids that age, can be mean and cruel. And when she said her daddy was overseas, they said, yeah, he's probably in jail.
Uh-huh.
So when I came home from Vietnam, I was the show and tell object for the next morning at her school. This is my daddy. I know he was a Marine.
And that you could do.
That-
Surviving after all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
How do you look back on it, having been a Marine? You're still a Marine, you know.
I'm still a Marine.
Say,
Sir.
once a Marine, always. That's why I wear this. And you got that one too, yeah. Yeah. I bet you still probably have your old campaign hat from when you were a DI. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Although we didn't have it when I was a DI, we didn't have a campaign hat.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Didn't have that straight
No.
peak cap?
That came in, they brought those in for the DIs in 1965. When Matthew McKeon marched all them kids into the
Oh,
school.
McKeon, yeah.
General Green came down from D.C. and took over the recruit training command. And he wanted all of the DIs to have, well, I was the supply officer, and I had to get a truck and go over to the air station and pick up the plane that brought those things in at 7 o'clock at night. And I had to bring them back to my warehouse, break them down. They come, a case of sevens, a case of 7.5. So we had to break them down and lot them out the way the general had given us a tariff of sizes for each battalion. I had to get out and deliver them at 5 o'clock the next morning so that all of the DIs could wear their campaign hats when the life photographer come down to take their picture.
So before that, you were wearing 4 and aft, I guess.
Or the
At that
utility cap
Yeah.
for the most part.
Or the other one, oh yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, what can we say to a guy who's experienced all that, or what can a guy who's experienced all that say?
Well,
You know?
they one time they asked me if I was religious, and I said, "Oh, everybody's religious in one way, shape, or form." I says, "However, I don't need a middleman. I speak directly to him, and he speaks to me." I says, "I know he's hearing me." I says, "I've survived 3 wars. I've survived Agent Orange. I've survived nuclear radiation. I went to Nagasaki 30 days after they dropped the atom bomb, and I lived there for 30 days. And I've survived 2 wives." I said, "Now, if he ain't taking care of me, I mean, who is?"
Okay.
That's my religion. That's a one-on-one.
Okay.
So-
And were you one of the Marines that guarded the heaven streets there, like the Marines hymn says?
Not yet.
Aha. Okay. You want to add anything to all this?
I'm sorry.
What you want to add anything to all this?
No, I don't think so. I did. No, that should pretty much wrap it up.
That's
But
well.
I appreciate you giving us your time.
Yeah. Well, Semper Fi.
Semper Fi.
Okay. That's us, right? Okay.